Hey guys, just wanted to kind of give you a lowdown on maybe talking about one of my daily drivers. Everybody wants to know what I drive every day, and you know, it's not always a rat rod. You know, if I need to pull something or if I need to go on a long trip, I like to drive something that's got a stereo and a heater in it, maybe some air conditioning. Not everything that I have has air conditioning. A lot of the rat rods are just for cruising around town and having fun and raising hell, you know what I mean? And every once in a while, you know, you want to have something that you can get somewhere. But I can't say that I'm against the new trucks. You know, the rules and regulations of the new trucks are getting so hard to deal with that you can't really do any modifications. You can't upgrade them to a more of a, say, performance. You know, we're getting real big into the EPA now and the smoke and what's going on with these trucks, and which I think is good. You know what I mean? We got to try to somewhat save our environment. But for me, I'm kind of old school. I want to keep it old school a little bit. You know, to pay $100,000 for a new truck, it's just, I don't even know if that's in my brain. You know what I mean? Like, I can't even fathom spending $100,000 or $70,000 on a new truck. I mean, my grandparents paid $16,000 for their first house. $16,000. You know what I mean? So to me, it's like for 100 grand, you can almost buy a house. And you know, these old Dodge trucks, you know, I'm just kind of a fan of the second gen Dodge. I've always been a big fan of it. I love the body style. It was really, to me, the peak of the best time of the Cummins motor. And I've just been a big fan of it for probably the last at least 15 years. So what I wanted to do is just kind of give you a story on my second gen. It's a 96 stick shift dually truck, which is pretty hard to find anymore. Most of the dually stick shift trucks are just, they're hammered. They've used them till there's just nothing left of them. You know, these trucks are getting real popular. They're getting to be very expensive. You know, the first gen Dodges right now are at a time where they've become a classic, and people are restoring the first gen Dodges, and they had the rotary pump 12 valve in them, and they're just such a great, dependable, honest motor. I mean, you hit the key on them things and they just wheel right over. There's no hesitation. They fire right up. The first gen Dodge is, you know, there's a couple things that are changed from the first to the second, which was drivability. I mean, the first gen Dodge was more of a rougher riding, you know, leaf spring front end. They didn't drive as good as the second gen. The second gen came out with the coilover front axle in it, where it actually traveled really good. Also, lack of horsepower. There's only so much horsepower you can get out of a first gen with the injection pump that's on it. You know, by 94, when they went to the P pump on these second gen Dodges, it was just like a whole new world that opened up. I mean, you could get more fuel. You could literally mess around with the injection pump and timing and make 400, 450 horse without even really modding it at that point. You know, once you start turning them up too much, then you're looking at, you know, exhaust temperatures and starting to melt pistons and things like that. But you can make a reliable 400 horse out of one of these trucks without doing much. And that's where this one's at right now, is it's probably about 400 horse, nothing over the top. It's pretty reliable. It doesn't get hot when I'm pulling the heels. It is enough to slip the clutch. So, I mean, it's making enough horsepower to do that. So let's talk about the motor Cummins itself. I mean, you know, when Clancy Cummins designed this motor, probably in the early 1900s, I want to say like 1909, he came up with this Cummins diesel, and throughout its life, it's always just been a workhorse. It's just been a workhorse. And in, I think 89, they started putting this Cummins diesel in the first generation Dodge truck, which we call the first gen. And they were really onto something. They actually took a work motor that was in either a semi truck or a piece of equipment, and then they actually started putting them in a pickup truck. And it really was the kickoff for like so much stuff, because with the 12 valve Cummins, you can do so much with it. You can mess with it just a little bit and make a bunch of horsepower out of it. And anytime you take an inline motor, an inline 6-cylinder engine, like take for instance the over-the-road semi trucks, even my Cat and my Peterbilt, it's an inline 6-cylinder. The friction is so less on just a straight up and down motion. A V8, you know, they fight a little harder. A V8 has to fight a little bit harder. So the diesel V8s, I'm not a big fan. I mean, they make a lot of horsepower and they run pretty good, but I'm just not a huge fan of the V8 diesel engine. They always run better in line. There's less friction. They make more torque. One of the best motors ever made was the 300 6-cylinder in a Ford, and it was an inline 6-cylinder motor. And I'll tell you what, you could make 300,000 miles with that motor, working the hell out of it all day long. So this Cummins diesel, I just really got turned on to them because of the amount of torque they make and how easy they are to work with. They're very dependable. And like I said, it doesn't take much to make horsepower with them, with a few adjustments on the motor, which is, you know, maybe rocking the barrels on the pump, putting a little timing in the pump, you know, messing with the injection pump. You can move the rack on this thing a little bit and get a little bit more fuel to it. You know, injectors are cheap for a 12 valve. I mean, you can buy a whole set of injectors for a 12 valve for what one injector takes on like a 6.7, which would be like a 3rd generation Dodge. I think they're $700 a piece for an injector when you could buy all 6 injectors for the same money. So they're kind of cheap. To me, they're almost like the small block Chevy of the era, where it's cheap to work on a 12 valve and make horsepower out of them. And you know, I just think that they're just such a cool motor. They're easy and very dependable. Now this truck here, this is a 96, like I said, it was a stick shift truck. And the reason why I'm talking about this one is because throughout my time I've probably owned, seriously, at least probably maybe 100 of them, okay? And they're easy to make money on. If you buy one, you can fix it up and flip it and sell it. I've flipped a ton of these trucks and sold them. My kids, I think Chase, through his senior year of high school and the year after high school, he made more money selling Dodge trucks than anything. I mean, he would buy them, flip them, sell them, pull the motors out of them. He's buying motors from California, bringing them over here, trading them, selling them. I mean, transfer cases, transmissions, you know, they're just so much fun and they're easy to make money with because everybody wants them. You know what I mean? They're a commodity that people want. And especially like doing these cab swaps, you could buy a truck like this that's completely clapped out, pull the cab off it, put your old truck cab back on it, which I've done a bunch of times, and go another 200,000 miles. I mean, it's pretty amazing that this truck right here has about 250,000 miles on it, and it's just now running good. You're like, it runs great. I drive it almost daily. You know, if the weather looks a little shitty, I'll drive this truck every time. But to go to this truck and talk about what's going on, like I said, it's a 96 Dodge, and when I bought this truck, it was clapped out. It had a yellow door right here. The door was yellow. The guy I bought it from chased me down in Montana, and he knew I was at my buddy Brad's at G&J Diesel there, and he came by and he goes, "Hey, I got this Dodge truck that I'm parting out. Would you like to look at the motor or whatever?" I'm like, "Sure, I'll just go over and look at the truck." So we went over. Truck was parked on the side of his house back in there. There was a bunch of crap in the bed. The fenders were falling off it. The bed was all clapped out. I got looking at the truck and I'm like, "Well, shoot, what do you want for the whole truck?" Because he's trying to give me the motor for $1,000. And he goes, "I don't know, maybe $2,000. I go, "I'll take it. $2,000, I'll buy the whole truck." To me, there's so many usable parts. I mean, it had an MV4500 in it. It had a 4-wheel drive, you know, it's 4-wheel drive. That's big for me. You know, it had a 12 valve Cummins in it. So there alone to me is worth the $2,000 all day long. So I think Merlin and my kids were with me, and we fired the truck up right in his yard, and I drove it over to Brad's at G&J Diesels, and we took it in there, put a clutch in it, and got a few things done to where we could drive it from Montana back to Vegas. Well, on the way over there, the front end was so clapped down on this truck that it just started shaking. It was feeling like the front end was gonna fall out of the truck. And I've got some video and you'll be able to see it, but the shifter in the truck just banging back and forth. And I mean, I thought the whole thing was gonna come apart. The dash was gonna fall out of the truck. There's stuff falling out of the glove box, and it was just a train wreck.
First gen guys be like, second gen Dodge guys be like, what the frick? Holy shit, talk about death wobble, huh? Is the battery still in there?
I think so.
Yeah, we just picked this one up,
We
man.
just picked up this hooping, got crack in the windshield.
So I got it back to the shop. We put a clutch in it. We hooked a gooseneck trailer to the back of this thing. And then we hauled another chassis behind it. And I think we got some video of that you guys can also see too. But if you can imagine, we had a 36-foot gooseneck trailer. We put a trailer hitch on it, and we pulled a chassis behind that thing, and the trailer was loaded full of stuff. Matter of fact, if you see on Vegas Rat Rods, it's called the two-stroke. It was a 58 Chevy Apache truck. So we put that truck on there, plus we pulled the chassis back from Montana. It was like pulling a set of doubles. So we got to about St. George, and I'm driving my semi truck, and I only drive it probably 75 miles an hour. I don't try to drive it real fast. Well, Merlin's he's wanting to get home. So he's in this truck, and he just holds it to the floor, he said. Holds it straight to the floor, all the way back, never let off it, he said. He just left full throttle. You know, these are governed so they don't go very, 411 gears in it, it's not gonna go real fast. But it sat at the rev limit, at 3,200 RPMs all the way back from St. George. So we get it back here, and I take it apart, and I'm like, you know what, this bed's a piece of crap. So I ripped the bed off it, and I was thinking about putting a flatbed on it. Well, a friend of mine calls me up and says, hey, we're looking for a truck to put a fire truck on the back for safety, for a site. And I'm like, well, I don't really have a truck. I mean, I do, but I don't really want to get rid of it because it's a 96 stick shift 4-wheel drive truck, and it was pretty clean. Like, other than the bed being ripped off of it, the body was in good shape. So I was like, shoot, man, I think I'm gonna turn this into a daily. Well, he goes, what do you want for it? And so I'm like, well, you know what? I'll probably wind up taking $7,500 for the truck. And so anyway, he's good, done. He bought the truck for $7,500. And so now I made $5,500 on this truck, driving it back from Montana, and really haven't even touched this truck. Put a clutch in it, and we straightened out the front end, and I think we had it towed in too far. It was towed out is what it was. It was towed out, and it would just start bouncing down the road. So we adjusted the front end and got it so this thing would drive back. So really, I mean, I used the same tires. I didn't change the tires or nothing. I put a $500 clutch in it. And so I came back here, sold the truck, and I kind of forgot about the truck. So a year or two goes by, my buddy calls me up, I went by there and I seen the bed was back off the truck, and I'm like, hey, what's going on with the Dodge? He's like, I don't know, something caught on fire under the hood and we didn't want to mess with it. So I go, what do you want for the truck? And he goes, well, I don't know, we'll probably take $3,000 for it. And I was like, yeah, I don't know, maybe not. So I gave it a month or two. Then he called me up and goes, hey, I'm looking for a pressure washer. So I found this pressure washer, a pretty nice one that I found on Craigslist. I think I paid $500 for the pressure washer. Brought it home, used it for a year. And he goes, I need the pressure washer. I go, well, I'll trade you this pressure washer for that Dodge back. So for $500, I got my truck back, right? And it wouldn't start because the solenoid, wasn't working because the solenoid wires burned up on it. So me and Chase, my son, we went over there, pushed the solenoid up, and I go, dude, just push me out the gate. And it fired right up, drove it home. So I got $7,500 for a truck. I paid $2,000, so I'm $5,500. traded him a $500 pressure wash. So what, like $5,000? I still am $5,000 ahead on this truck, okay? Didn't cost me nothing. This truck hasn't cost me a dime. So I bring it back to my house. It sits in my yard for a while, and I go, you know what? I told my son Chase and Cash, I go, you know what? I think I'm gonna fix that old second gen up because it's in pretty good shape. So I brought it to the shop, and I went through this thing, and I decided, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead and paint it and do a nice truck, a nice driver. And so I brought it back to the shop, and I think I probably put maybe maybe 7,000 in the whole truck. Interior, wheels, tires, suspension, same motor. I haven't touched the motor. The motor's got a little bit of timing in it, but that's about it. It doesn't, I don't have it turned up. I don't have it where it's crazy. It's got a little bit of timing in the motor, so it actually runs kind of crisp and it sounds good and it pulls pretty good. But I haven't done anything to it. It's still all stock all the way through it. So that's my next adventure on this thing is twin turbo it, head stud it, fast pump, you know, do all the stuff, put a nice clutch in it, probably a bigger transfer case, bigger drive line, and kind of upgrade everything on it so it'll hold together. But right now, you know, I just drive it stock. It probably makes, I don't know, it's got to be making 19 miles a gallon even with these 37-inch tires on it. But as you can see, I lifted it up, put some nice wheels and tires on it. This bumper right here, me and Justin and Chase actually built this for Chase's truck probably his senior year in high school and put it together in the shop and weld her up. You can see we got these big connecting rods right here in the front and put a light bar in it. It just was a cool bumper, and then my kid took it off his truck because he's running those 3rd gen bumpers on his 2nd gens now. And I go, well, what are you gonna do with that? And he's like, I don't know. So I put it on here and it kind of looks good on the truck. I got a different grill for it, a different hood, kind of got that cow hood. It kind of made it look really nice, you know what I mean? It gives it kind of a neat look, you know what I mean? That hood is just cool on there. The truck was already black, so I just painted it black again. My buddy Big Z came over and helped me paint the truck. We just kind of did a quickie on it. It's not really like a total pristine, badass paint job, but it's pretty legit. Okay, so my intentions with this truck when I actually went through it to kind of somewhat restore it, it wasn't to do it where I couldn't drive it. Like, this is my daily driver, you know what I mean? Air conditioning, heat, and it actually is a pretty nice driver. And so I didn't want to like go all out on like a $50,000 paint job. I mean, we shot this thing in the shop. It was probably like 120 degrees. It wasn't in the perfect environment, but you know, it's a 50 footer. I mean, it looks great at 50 feet. Up close, you can see a few of the blemishes in it. I mean, you can see that there's like even right here, there's a little bit of, I just noticed that while we've been out here. So I'll just take my Sharpie and kind of fix that a little bit. See if we can make that look a little bit better. You know, get rid of that little bit of white in there. So that's what's so nice about having a black truck. You can walk around with a Sharpie and just fix all your chips. I do it all the time. But you know, it is a nice truck. It's got 411 gears in it. It's got an NV 4500 transmission. So it actually drives pretty good. You put this taller tire on it, and even with those 411 gears, it kind of gives it a little bit more top end when you're driving down the highway. So the only thing that sucks about these trucks, when you're running like a 235 or a 245, you know, they just rev out and you can only do like 70 miles an hour with them. Put a little bit taller tire on them, they'll go a little bit faster down the highway, and they still have enough torque that it makes bottom end power where you can, you know, put a taller tire on it and it still pulls pretty good. Let's go check out the inside. So the great thing about this truck is being that it was a black truck, it's kind of the right color because the interior came gray. Usually the headliner in them is gray, which I took my headliner out. My buddy Junior that does all my upholstery work, I don't know if you can see it, but up in the top, he put welder up in the headliner, redid it in a suede. We redid the seats in a suede. I wanted to kind of keep the factory look, but put the suede, put some, you know, Western stitching in it, put some conchos in it, and then I had him burn the welder up in the headrest and across right here on the armrest. The thing that I do like about the 12 valve, like I said, is at the end of the day, if you're in the middle of nowhere and you run out of diesel fuel, you could literally pour used engine oil in the tank on this thing, mix it up with maybe some transmission fluid, and push start this thing and get home. That's what I love about it, is that you're not dependent on somebody with a computer that has to plug it in and find out what's wrong with it, which injector's bad, blah, blah, blah. This thing, if it's got a bad injector, I could drive it 100,000 miles with a bad injector. I don't care. They just live. You could literally melt a piston in this truck and probably drive it another 30,000 miles. It doesn't care. But the multi-use of the fuel that you can run through this P-pump design is really kind of second to none. You know, they're so user-friendly. Like I said, I mean, you could mix, like I know Merlin on his, he mixes Chico's Tacos, which is a taco place in Lake Havasu that we always go eat at when I'm in Lake Havasu. And Merlin's there all the time, and he gets all their grease that comes out of their taco grease. Takes it home, and he's got his own mixture, and he runs it through his 12 valve. He's got a 97 12 valve. And he said when we shot the last season of TV here at Vegas Rat Rods, he drove back and forth to Havasu and it cost him $1 a gallon in fuel. So he would mix his diesel fuel with the Chico's Tacos grease, and it cost him $1 a gallon, which, you know, right now it's $3.50, you know, $3.50 a gallon right now. So that's pretty good. I mean, to think about like how cheap you can actually run these trucks. And, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, they roll coal. That's if you want them to roll coal. You know, if you want to put a bunch of fuel to these trucks and make them roll coal, you can. But even with like Merlin and like on this truck, I dump transmission fluid and used engine oil, and my kids do the same thing on theirs. So if you got a half a tank of diesel fuel, you could dump, you know, 3 gallons of the oil that came out of it. Like when I change the oil, I dump it right back in the tank on this truck. That's 3 gallons, 3, 6, 9. So that's $10 or $11 in fuel I saved just draining the oil out of it and putting it in here. So, you know, I mean, really there's so many different ways of getting by with a 12 valve diesel, and I just think that they're just cool, and I love the way they work. There's so many little tricks on making power with them, and you know, I've learned so many things about them over the past 10 years that I just really fell in love with the 12 valve, and I think that they're just ultimately probably the best motor on the planet. Aside of a 350 Chevy and a 6-cylinder inline Ford 300 6-cylinder, you know, I don't know. I mean, those are probably the top motors that I think that just would live till the end of time. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed my my little bio on my second gen. You know, everything that I have, you know, it's funny because people, when I pull up at the restaurant or something, they always expect me to be driving something like that is, you know, like the D-Rod or something like that, which I do like to get it out and take it to dinner once in a while. But you pull up in something like this and it's just cool. It's nostalgic now. I mean, this truck is a 96, so it's getting old. It's a classic now. And, you know, I'll probably drive this thing. It's 256,000 miles on it. I don't mind driving it. I don't need a new truck. I'll drive this old truck and be just as happy as if it was a brand new one. Every day I get in it, I feel like it's new. But, you know, I guess the moral of the story is you can find these old trucks laying around, and you can put $5,000 or $10,000 in them and have a really, really nice truck. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this little bio on my my second gen Dodge. It's a pretty cool truck. Anyway, if you got any comments, I want to know about your guys' second gen or first gen. I like the first gens too. I like the rideability of the second gen. They just ride better. They just feel better to drive around. But if you guys have any comments, just make sure you let me know about your second gen. Send me some pictures, man. I love them. They're like one of my favorite trucks out there on the road. So love to hear about it. But anyway, make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you later.